This is a difficult poem. It is, in some sense, it defines a new kind of poetry. It is a poem that has footnotes. I think this is the first poem in the history of Western literature to have footnotes. And Eliot really thought they were crucial to understanding what this poem was all about. It also demands a huge amount of the reader, not only in its constant literary allusions, but also its symbolism and its use of many, many different languages. Consider this epigraph. Nam sibilam quidem plumis ego ipse oculis meis, quidi in ampula pendere et cum ili pueri diceret, sibulat, Themis, respondebat illa apum fene fene.
Yes.
Good. Now, I assume you're all up on your Greek and Latin if you got into UT, so. Anyway, what does it mean? Well, now, ego ipse oculis meis, quidi, I have seen the Sibyl of Cumae with my own eyes in ampula pendere, hanging in a jar. And when the children said, Sibyl, Themis, now this is in Greek, what do you want? She responded, Apophene phene, I want to die. Now, that's a happy opening, right? Wonder they haven't made this into a children's book. Now, that's a joke. What? Does anybody know the story of the Sibyl? Okay, the Sibyl did something very fine for the gods, and so was granted a wish. And the Sibyl said, I wish for eternal life. She forgot to ask for eternal youth. And so she did not die, but got older and older, more and more shriveled, until finally, at this point, she is this shriveled hull, hanging upside down in a jar like a bat, okay? Shrunken, and incapable of doing anything, and in particular incapable of dying. So what does she want? She wants to die because she's so old and shriveled, her life is a misery to her. So here is the translation. This is from Petronius' Satyricon. Now she's reduced to hanging in this jar. Well, then a dedication to Ezra Pound, Emil your father. That's Italian, and he's referring to Dante here, in which Guido of Guizzelli pays tribute to the Provençal poet Arnaud Daniel as the better maker of poems. So the better craftsman. But essentially, here's the story behind this one. Eliot had written a much, much longer version of this poem and had shown it to his friend Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound said, wait a minute, this whole middle section is really dull and has to go. And so the length of the thing was shortened greatly. So actually Pound did play an important role here in making this a much better poem. Well, here is the beginning of the poem. And notice the image here. The burial of the dead is what this section is called. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Now that's kind of a surprising opening, right? Springtime, April. If I say, just think about spring, think about April, what comes into your mind? What are the images?
Flowers.
Okay, flowers, new life. What else? Rain, youth. What else? Beauty, clarity. I mean, good things, right? You think April, springtime. You don't think, oh.
Mosquitoes come back.
Mosquitoes come back. Well, that's true. In Texas, April can be a mixed blessing. But April is the coolest month, breeding lilacs out of it. Notice the dead land. It's sort of like, well, look, we were dead. We were covered. We were buried and in this warm blanket of snow. And now we're being stirred to wakefulness. Think about, being awakened from a deep sleep. It's not a pleasant sensation. In fact, one of my daughters, tragically, now hates classical music. And I said, how can you hate classical music? She said, because to wake us up, you used to turn on classical music. I would turn on some opera, La Traviata, and they would wake up to La Traviata, right? And so the one daughter is now a classical musician. The other daughter hates it with every fiber of her being. But in any case, yeah, that being stirred awake is a difficult thing. So we get something that's the opposite of those springtime images here. It's like spring isn't new life. Spring is the death of death, disturbing death, waking it up again. That's a difficult thing. There's also a reference here to Chaucer at the opening of the Canterbury Tales. Notice how different this is, but how parallel. One that April with his shower suta, the draught of March, has pierced into the ruta, and bathed every vein which will of which virtue engenders the lure. Or, in modern English, when April with his shower sweet with fruit, the drought of March has pierced to the root, and bathed each vein with liquor that has power to generate therein, inspire the flower. Okay, so in Chaucer, it's yes, bringing new life together. These tubers under the earth are being reawakened, and it's joyous, it's wonderful. Just the opposite of the image in Eliot. And so he is consciously turning that image on its head. He is basically hoping, well, and if his hope is dashed, then at least putting in the footnote to say, I'm alluding to the Canterbury Tales here, but I'm switching it all around, okay? This is just like the opposite image of April. But now we get a sudden shift of focus. It's as if the poem has this, has ADHD, really. It's just constantly shifting around, shifting focus, shifting narrator. So all of a sudden, summer surprises coming over the Starnberger See with a shower of rain. We stopped in the colonnade and went on in sunlight at the Hofgarten and drank coffee and talked for an hour. Bin kar keiner Russell, stand aus mit Howard. That's Deutsch. So, that is actually the Starnberger See that you see there in the background. Now, give me the image of this. What does this suggest? Say it again?
Relaxation.
Good, relaxation, vacation, right? Ah, rain shower, we stopped in the Hofgarten, drank coffee, talked. And then we get this, now how many languages do we have here? We've already seen Greek and Latin, and of course English. But now we get German, okay? And what does it mean? I'm not Russian, I'm Lithuanian. A real German. Okay. And when we were children staying at the Archduke's, my cousins, he took me out on a sled, and I was frightened. He said, Marie, Marie, hold on tight. And down we went. In the mountains there you feel free. I read much of the night and go south and north. Tell me about that. Notice the narrator's now a woman, recalling her childhood. But what else? What's the image that comes to your mind there? Oh, go south in the winter, yes, like a bird, yes. But look at that. When we were children, staying at the Archduke's. Do you go to stay at the Archduke's house? I don't get to stay at the Archduke's house, right? So we're talking here about European nobility. Okay, we're up there in the mountains, and then we go south in the winter. You know, these people with houses all over the place. Oh, it's wintertime, let's go south. But here we can go north when the weather gets warm and all of that kind of thing. I mean, we get an image here of wealth, of nobility, of the old Europe, the pre-World War I Europe. Okay, and someone recalling their pleasant childhood in those days. Now, we get another sudden shift. What are the roots that clutch? What branches grow out of this stony rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess. For you will know only a heap of broken images, where the sun beats and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no rain, and the dry stone no sound of water. So now, we get a really different image, right? A moment ago, we were sled riding in the Alps at the Archduke's. And now all of a sudden we're in the middle of the desert. I almost said the misery of the desert. But yes, stony rubbish, the broken images, the dead tree giving no shelter. Now, what is going on here? Good, a drought. So we've got a drought, we've got no shelter, the cricket no relief, no water, things are dying. In fact, perhaps the dead tree is already dead tree. So we get this heap of broken images. Everything's broken, everything's shattered, everything's dead. Also notice the Son of Man. We get this religious image here. There is shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock. And I will show you something different from either your shadow at morning, striding behind you, or your shadow at evening, rising to meet you. I will show you fear in a handful of dust. Yeah. What's going on here? Yeah.
I think that there's like a sense that that T.S. Eliot's trying to show that there is a fear of uncertainty of the future. There's a shattered society and we don't know which direction we're heading into.
All right, good. Lots of fear of the future. Fear in a handful of dust. And what's dust the image of? Death. Yes, from dust to dust. And so we've got this fear, and you're right, this sense of things having been shattered. Consider that he's writing this just after the war. And so one way of looking at this is to say, look, I'm mixing images of that civilization past, going to the Hofgarten and talking about people's ancestry in German, or going sled riding in the mountains. But now, how are things actually going? Gosh, nothing but a heap of broken images, nothing but the dead trees in the desert. It's as if everything has dried up, everything has died, and there's this huge fear of the future. Not only, notice, there's shadow at morning striding behind you, there's shadow at evening rising to meet you. So I'm not talking here, he says, about the past. I'm not necessarily talking just about the future. I'm saying that really there's a sort of confrontation with our own mortality here that leaves us in a state of fear. That everything we knew, everything we thought we believed in has been shattered. Now we get another shift. Frisch wird der Wind der Heimat zu, mein Irischkind, wo weilest du? That is from Tristan and Isolde. The wind blows fresh to the homeland, my Irish girl. Where are you lingering? This is Tristan basically waiting for his love. They are looking out to sea and finding nothing. Okay? Saying, where are you? Everything is blowing fresh. The wind is blowing this way. Why aren't you here? Still another shift. You gave me hyacinths first a year ago. They called me the Hyacinth girl. Yet when we came back late from the Hyacinth garden, your arms full and your hair wet, I couldn't speak, and my eyes failed. I was neither living nor dead, and I knew nothing, looking into the heart of light, the silence. Old und leer das Meer. Which means desolate and empty the sea. So, once again, that image that before, not so long ago, we were there in a hyacinth garden, and yet all of a sudden came back from that, and I was neither living nor dead. I couldn't see anything, I couldn't talk, and I knew nothing. Looking at the silence. Desolate and empty the sea. Again, Tristan looking there for his love and finding nothing. We get still another shift. Unreal city, under the brown fog of a winter dawn. A crowd flowed over London Bridge. So many, I hadn't thought death had undone so many. Sighs, short and infrequent, were exhaled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet. Flowed up the hill and down King William Street to where St. Mary Woolnoth kept the hours with a dead sound on the final stroke of the night. Eliot has a footnote that said, actually I've often noticed that that particular church does ring a bell, and that the last strike always has this weird dead sound to it. There must have been some kind of stopper to stop it that sort of made the sound have a weird quality. And he also said, I often had looked out and seen these crowds over London Bridge going down King William Street, all these commuters just trudging to their jobs like this. Also, men trudging there off to war or coming back. Yeah?
So why are like all of his poems always alluding to death and stuff like that? Like, they've got so many references. Is that just because it's written after the war?
That's a good question. Why do all these poems have so many references to death? Now, some people would say, yes, it's because all of this is written right after World War I, and death is something very much on all of these figures' minds. And so, even in a work that seems hopeful and optimistic like the one we'll look at next time, there's a lot of death hovering around. And so, you might think, yes, it's something specific to this time period, and the shattering of civilization. Yeah. People had thought had gone on as a result of the war. Not only literal death, but in a sense, the figurative death of an entire society. And so, that's part of the answer. Of course, some people think, no, poetry is about death. I remember,
about death.
Yes, I remember my high school English teacher doing a poem by I think it was Robert Frost.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know, there's the crow watching me from the birch. What do crows symbolize? Death.
I mean,
It's a winter time. What does winter symbolize? Death. It was all death, death, death. And his basic point is, yeah, whatever any poem is about, it's always death in the end. Now, I don't think that's true. I mean, some of my favorite poems are not, I think, about death. For example, well, actually, I showed you the one about the bees, right? That's not about death. But also, there's another, gee, what is it with me and bee poems? But my favorite Emily Dickinson poem is like that. To make a prairie, it takes one flower and a bee. A flower and one bee, and reverie. The reverie alone will do if bees are few. That's awesome, but it's not about death. But it is about bees. So maybe a revised hypothesis is all poems are about either bees or death. But anyway, this is something that, you know, gives us death. Again, all these people are just trudging along like this, okay? As if they're zombies. That's supposed to be the image you have here. And a dead sound on the final stroke of 9. The church bell, the bell might be gonging, you know, in a funereal sort of way. And this image, not only of commuters, but of people going off to war, or people returning from the war, or funerals being held to commemorate those who had died. All of those things would have been common sights. And now, he gives us a footnote. There's a reference here to Dante's Inferno. Si lunga tratta di gente, ch'io non avrei mai creduto che morte tanta ardesse disfatta. So long a train of people, but I should never have believed death had undone so many. Now we get another language, Italian. And we're not done yet. There will be other languages along the way. But we've got this, notice it's almost the same. So long a train of people, I would never have thought death had undone so many. We also have another one. Here to my hearing there was no weeping but sighs, which caused the eternal air to tremble. And actually, if you know Italian, you can look at that and realize this is medieval Italian. But anyway. Now, there I saw one I knew, and stopped it, crying, "Stetson, you who were with me in the ships at Milan, that corpse you planted last year in your garden, has it begun to sprout? Will it bloom this year, or has the son of frost disturbed its bed? Oh, keep the dog far hence, its friend to men, or with his nails he'll dig it up again. You, hypocrite lecture, mon semblable, mon frère." Now, another language, French again. But look, there I saw one I knew and stopped him, crying, "Stetson." Now, tell me about that. Stetson. What's the image? What's a Stetson?
Run culture.
This is the University of Texas at Austin. And you don't know what a Stetson is?
No, I'm sorry.
It's a hat.
Yes, it's a hat. Thank you. It is a cowboy hat. Yes, it's a really expensive, really nice cowboy hat. Now, oh, okay. Good, I'm glad some of you knew it. Now,
Yeah, you went to 8.
what? Oh, yeah, it's true. If I were at A&M, everybody would know like that. Now, what is that a symbol of? Cowboys, cowboy hat, Texas. What is that symbolic of? Maybe this is the worst place in the world for me to ask that question. You're too close to it.
The original one.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, life, power, strength. Notice, this is an old soldier, right? You who were with me in the ships at Milan. That's an ancient battle. And so he's basically saying, look, we served together in the war, right? You get this image of masculinity, of strength, of power, and of a kind of, if you will, simplicity, of innocence. But now, it very quickly turns from that to that corpse you planted last year in your garden. So somebody died. Somebody was buried. But now we go back to the beginning. That image of death being disturbed, being troubled, okay? The dog. That dog might, with his nails, dig up the body. And then, you, hypocrite reader, my likeness, my doppelganger, my friend, my brother. But keep the wolf far thence that's foe to men, is in Webster, for with his nails he'll dig them up again. But notice here, it's the wolf, a hostile force to men. This is what Eliot is alluding to. Here it's the dog, it's the friend that is actually going to cause the trouble. Now, this whole section is called the burial of the dead. And in the Book of Common Worship, there is a ceremony that is to be done for the burial of the dead. I am the resurrection of the life, saith the Lord. And I know that my Redeemer lives, and shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. Now, these images are ones that are supposed to be in the background of this section. It's really about, in a sense, this question of death and whether it's possible, and whether it would even be a good thing for the dead to be raised up again. That's why spring, April, is the cruelest month. Because, in a sense, once things are dead, this thought of how do we bring back this civilization? How do we revive it? He's saying that's not only a difficult thing, it is not an entirely desirable thing. It is something that may be better left dead. Now, part 2 is called a game of chess. And it's all about misdirected and sterile sexuality. I'm not going to go into it in a lot of detail. It takes a long time to figure out what these people in the pub are talking about. It turns out the woman has had an abortion, and that's a lot of what the indirect conversation is really about. There is this image of Cleopatra, of Tereus and Philomela, a woman who in the myth is raped and then later turned into a nightingale. It's a very, very disturbing myth. There is a hectoring wife. There are references to Ophelia in Hamlet. There's a lot of mess in this section, and it's bleak. Here's the hectoring wife part. I never know what you're thinking. Think. I think we're in Rat's Alley where the dead men lost their bones. Do you know nothing? Do you see nothing? Do you remember nothing? I remember those are pearls that were his eyes. Yeah, typical dinner table conversation. No, anyway, it's a very weird section, but it's really all about the impossibility in the sense of human relationships. And why the focus on sex throughout this? Well, because sex is regeneration. Okay, that's how new generations get produced. And so, in a sense, the question here is, can a civilization actually reproduce in some way? Can it give birth to a new civilization? And the danger, the fear, is that it can't do it. So think here not just about individual human relationships, though I think Eliot has something to say about that too. He's thinking about this as a kind of analogy for a civilization, a dead civilization. But can it actually reproduce? Is it something that, out of which a new civilization can grow, be born? And it's not an optimistic section about that. What's the reference to with those are pearls that were his eyes? An image from the Tempest. And throughout this poem, death by drowning is a persistent theme. Full fathom 5, thy father lies. This is from Shakespeare. Of his bones are coral made. Those are pearls that were his eyes. Nothing of him that doth fade, but suffer a sea change into something rich and strange. Seen him sourly ring his bell. Further, ding dong, hark, now I hear him. Ding dong now. Section 3 is entitled The Fire Circle. And it is now referring to a sermon of the Buddha and tracking, in some ways, the basic themes of that sermon. So we've seen something tracking the burial of the dead. Now we've seen this section on sex and reproduction. Then a section on, well, the fire sermon is all about design, as we'll see. The river's tent is broken. The last fingers of leaf clutch and sink into the wet bank. The wind crosses the brown land unheard. The nymphs are departed. Sweet Thames runs softly till I am my song. The river bears no empty bottles, sandwich papers, silk handkerchiefs, cardboard boxes, cigarette ends, or other testimony of summer nights. The nymphs are departed. So what's the image here? Yeah. Oh, that's actually a really interesting thing. Yeah. You could think about the river. Here, of course, it's just the Thames that runs through the middle of London, But in the myth, there's this river Styx that is one that separates the living from the dead. And if you can cross it, well, in one direction you can go to the land of the dead. If you can cross it in coming back, the story goes, you lose all your memories in doing it. And so, to the extent, I hadn't even thought of this, but that's a great thought, that this is really a reference to that river that divides the living and the dead and destroys memory in the process. If that's what's going on, then you realize, wait a minute, the other side of the Thames is like a place where once you go, you can never come back and be what you were. You can never actually recover the person you are now. You can never recover those memories. Notice also here we get empty bottles, sandwich papers, cardboard boxes, cigarette ends, things that are left behind, right? Everybody's left. There was a party here. There was a grand party, but it's gone. All the people have left. We just have now the garbage. Remember that stony rubbish we saw in an earlier part of the poem. It's as if we're confronted here with the papery rubbish, but a similar image that this is no longer populated. It's been abandoned. Their friends, the loitering heirs of city dwellers, departed, left no addresses. By the waters of Laban I sat down and wept. That's a biblical reference. Of course not to Laban, but the rivers of Babylon. There we sat down, yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song. Sweet Thames, run softly, for I speak not loud nor long. But at my back in a cold blast I hear the rattle of the bones, and chuckle spread from ear to ear. That image of being chased by death is a frightening one. Cold blast, the rattle of the bones, the chuckle. There is a reference here, well, to several things. To Spenser, each one did make his bride against their bridal day, which is not long, sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song. But that's about a wedding. That's supposed to be a pleasurable, delightful thing, a celebration. And then the other reference to Andrew Marvell. But at my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying me, and yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. That too is an image of being chased by death. But as you can see, a very different image. Eliot is giving you a much more graphic, much more horrifying image of death at your back. And now we get one of the other main themes of the poem introduced. A rat crept softly through the vegetation, dragging its slimy belly on the bank, while I was fishing in the Null Canal on a winter evening round behind the gas house, musing upon the king my brother's wreck, and on the king my father's death before him. So now we get this image of the prince. They're fishing in the Null Canal. And there's a myth here that a number of people had written about shortly before this poem. Jesse Weston and others wrote books on this image of the Fisher King. Here's the way this story goes. A story they claim to find in many different cultures, in many different forms. The king is charged with keeping the Holy Grail, the cup from which Jesus last drank. Okay? And the king keeps it for many years, but then he is wounded, and his kingdom turns into a wasteland. Well, at that point, the question is what can be done to revitalize the wasteland, if anything? And the idea here is that a number of religions, including Christianity, according to Weston and others, are really fertility cults. They center around this idea of sacrificing a sacred king, who's then revived and enables the earth to be reborn in spring. Okay? So this idea of rebirth is something sort of built in to this mythic image. Now, I am not sure at all about the anthropology that underlies this. At the time, people were very impressed with it. It now looks kind of not very scientific. But in any event, the thought is, there is this wasteland. The king has been wounded, and everything has started going to hell, essentially. And what's required to revive it, it is possible, but it requires a sacrifice. It requires the Fisher King, the sacred king, to actually sacrifice himself voluntarily. But that not only leads to his own resurrection and rebirth, but then to the rebirth of the world. So we get something like that going on in this next section. But again, there's a question mark. There's a question of whether or not that sort of thing is even possible. At the violent hour when the eyes and back turn upward from the desk, when the human engine waits like a taxi, waiting. I, Tiresias. Now, Tiresias is another figure from ancient mythology. Anybody know the story of Tiresias? Yes, okay, good. Well, some of you have mumbled this. Good, yes. Tiresias is blind, and basically, Zeus and Hera were in an argument over whether sex is better for men and for women, or for women. And they decide to make Tiresias both male and female, so that Tiresias can answer this question. Which he proceeds to do, and says, yeah, it's better for women. Just in case you wondered what the end of the story is. But anyway, this is the basic pattern of the story. So he's this old man, who also has female breasts, can see at the violet hour, the evening hour, that strives homeward and brings the sailor home from the sea. And now he says, actually Tiresias here, merely a spectator, really, not a main character. Nevertheless, he really is the most important person in the poem. And I find it very strange, actually, to think about that, but it raises a question. Why is Tiresias important? And then there are all sorts of other people. I've skipped over those parts. But he's really not distinct from all these other appearances of characters in the poem. So all the women are one women. The two sexes meet in Tiresias. What Tiresias sees is the substance of the poem. But he is blind. So yes, some spectator, he's blind. Right? So what do we end up saying about all of this? Well, what does he see? I mean, he's blind. Does he see anything? What is it that Tiresias comes to understand? Well, it's very hard to see. In this section, there are, well, gosh, we get more images of misdirected and terrible sexuality. And at the end here, we get this. To Carthage then I came, burning, 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 burning. O Lord, thou pluckest me out. O Lord, thou pluckest, burning. What's happening there? To Carthage then I came. Who goes to Carthage? The Archbishop of Hippo, which is who? Augustine. Good. Okay, so there's a reference to Augustine here. Burning, 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 burning. This is a reference to the fire sermon. The whole fire sermon, the Buddha is saying, my eyes are on fire. With what? With a fire of desire, of craving. My ears are on fire. With desire, with craving. And, well, everything's on fire. It just goes on like that. But we get that. Then, O Lord, thou pluckest me out. That's a biblical reference to what? If your eye offends you, pluck it out. Okay, better that than to be led into sin. And so we get a number of these images of desire leading people into deep trouble. Here is a section of the fire sermon. All things, O priests, are on fire. And what, O priests, are all these things which are on fire? I, O priest, is on fire. Forms are on fire. Eye consciousness is on fire. Impressions received by the eye are on fire. Whatever sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, or indifferent, originates in dependence or on impressions received by the eye, that is also on fire. Okay, with what? With the fire of passion, of hatred, of infatuation, with birth, old age, death, sorrow, lamentation, misery, grief, and despair are they on fire. Well, it goes on and on. The whole idea is to get beyond passion, there, to get beyond desire. So what is it that Tiresias sees? Well, it's something like the theme of the fire sermon. It is something like that noble truth, that craving is the cause of suffering. And so, to some extent here, I think it's not very clearly spelled out what Tiresias sees, but one way of looking at it is to say he sees the truth the Buddha was getting at in the fire sermon. He sees that it is really desire that causes suffering. The craving, selfishness, those things cause suffering. Now, we get a very short section, death by water. Phlebas the Phoenician, a fortnight dead, forgot the cry of gulls and the deep sea swell and the prophet and loss. A current under sea picked his bones in whispers. As he rose and fell, he passes the stage of his age and youth, entering the whirlpool. Gentile or Jew, O you who turn the wheel and look windward, consider Phlebas, who was once handsome and tall as you. What's going on in that scene? Phlebas is drowned, okay? We're seeing the body decaying in the water. And Eliot is saying, consider Phlebas. who was once as tall and handsome as you. But in the end, that's the fate of every one of us. Yeah, you get the point, right? Okay, but notice, yeah, turn the wheel. Who is Phoebus? Well, I think a character from Plato. Philebus is one of the dialogues of Plato, and Philebus is somebody who takes pleasure in this world. Enjoyment, pleasure, delight. All of those are the good. What are we here for? What do we ultimately want? We want pleasure. We want enjoyment. We want delight. We want joy in this world. That's what this is all about. That's what everything is all about. And so, in part here, we have a criticism of that, saying, look, in the end, all of that is temporary. In fact, there are a number of Buddhist dialogues and sermons that go around that same theme. All pleasure is temporary. All enjoyment is temporary. Those are not the ultimate ends of human life. Those are transitory. But now the final section. And this is the section that brings us some element of hope. Really the first, I think, throughout this entire poem that gives us anything. He who was living is now dead. We who were living are now dying. Who are these hooded hordes swarming over endless plains, stumbling in cracked earth, ringed by the flat horizon only? What is the city over the mountains, cracks and reforms and bursts in the violet air? Falling towers, Jerusalem, Athens, Alexandria, Vienna, London. Unbelievable. Tell me about those cities. Why does he pick those out? Jerusalem, Athens, Alexandria, Vienna, London. Say it again.
They're like cultural epicenters.
Cultural epicenters, yes. These were the centers of entire civilizations. Jerusalem, Athens, Alexandria, the center of the Hellenistic world. Then Vienna, London. London is the one he's thinking about currently, okay? And at the time it's like the center, the city around which the entire civilization revolves. But he says now they're all falling towers. Just as some of them are now gone, some of them are merely shells, those civilizations are gone, so the same thing is happening to London, to this civilization. In this decayed hole among the mountains, in the faint moonlight, the grass is singing over the tumbled graves. About the chapel, there is the empty chapel, only the winds roll. No, so again, graves, empty chapel, it has no windows, and the door swings, dry bones can harm no one. Only a cock stood in the roof tree. Cocorico, cocorico. In a flash of light, then a damp gust bringing rain. That's the first time we've had anything throughout the poem that suggests the possibility of rebirth. Anything positive, anything in that stony rubbish where there is no water. A return to the Fisher King image. I sat up on the shore fishing with the arid plain behind me. Shall I at least set my hands in order? London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. Well, a children's verse here introduced to symbolize what he saw as the collapse of a civilization going on around him. So what should he do? He says, well, maybe the best I can do is to set my own lands in order, tend to my own life. The civilization's crumbling around me. There's nothing I can really do about that. But maybe I can just take care of myself. And now we get a sort of bunch of images here, right at the end. These little fragments of poems, of languages and so on. Pues que so se nel foco che mia figlia. Now I pray you by that virtue that guides you to the top of the stair, be mindful in time of my suffering. Then he hid himself in the fire that refines, and that's what that Italian means. He hid himself in the fire that refines. And so he's thinking about that. Maybe the fire that he sees engulfing this entire civilization will be a fire that refines, that will allow a few things to survive. Quando piano Herodon, when shall I be as the swallow? This again refers to this Tereus and incredibly depressing, barbarous story about the rape. And, well, yes, a number of references to Swinburne and Tennyson. Now, swallow. The Prince Aquitaine, the Prince of Aquitaine, the ruined tower. So again, ruined tower. There's still a prince, but the tower is gone. The civilization is collapsed. These fragments I have shored against my ruins. Why then I'll fit you, Tyranno's madman. These fragments, Here is one of, as I see it, the main themes of the poem. The civilization is collapsing, but there are fragments. There are fragments reflected in all of these languages, in all of these allusions. There are fragments that can survive. And so maybe it would be possible to preserve these fragments, at least to give some fragments out of which another civilization might be rebuilt. So those I have shored against my ruins. He sees himself as gathering up some of these fragments. In fact, one person has said, in a dark time, the only noble profession is to be a curator of values. And I think that's in part what Eliot sees himself as doing, as being a curator, saying, look, things are shattered here, but at least I can save a few of the fragments and create a museum of these fragments that can be passed along. And now, why then I'll fit you. Hieronymus mad again. Data, Dayadvam, Damyata. Another language, Sanskrit. Shanti. Now, what is going on with the Sanskrit right at the end? This is a reference to one of the Upanishads. And in the Upanishad, what's happening is that there is, a tale of someone trying to explain, basically, the basics of how to live. And so, having finished their studentship, the god said, tell us something, sir. He told them the syllable da. Then he said, did you understand? They said, we did understand. You told us damyata, be subdued. Yes, he said, you've understood. Then the men said to him, tell us something. He says the same thing, da. Did you understand? We did understand. You said data, give. Yes, you've understood. Then the Asuras said to him, tell us something. He says, da. Did you understand? We did. You said, dayadva, be merciful. Yes, he said, you've understood. So, the divine voice of thunder repeats the same, da, da, da. Be subdued, give, be merciful. Let that triad be taught. Subduing, or self-control. Giving, mercy. Well, this is, in a sense, how this all ends. What I think Eliot is doing is saying, here's what we have to do. We have to go back to the very beginnings of this civilization. And where are the beginnings of Western civilization? Ultimately in India. Really, it all comes from the roots of Indo-European languages. The earliest texts we have are the Rig Veda and the Upanishads. And so we say, go back to those. Look at the basic values from which this civilization all started. What were they? Self-control, giving, mercy. Those are things upon which an entire civilization can be found. Our civilization is falling apart around us, but we can at least preserve that. We can at least preserve the fragments of what this civilization has produced, go back to these basics and say, maybe if we can pass at least those elements along, that they can be the seeds out of which a new civilization can be born.